Hi there, welcome to the conversation with PFlow. My name is Femi Alade. Today I'm going to be starting this first episode on something that's quite topical. Nigeria in the last few days has been experiencing what I would call a cost of living crisis that has led to several protests across the country. I think it's actually fair for us to take a minute silence for those who lost their lives as a result of these protests. May their souls rest in peace. Now, let's talk about Nigeria. Everyone knows that in the last few years, the Nigerian economy has gone through very difficult situations and challenges. We've seen probably the worst levels of mismanagement ever in the history of the country. We allowed a government print the naira in copious quantities than like we've never seen before. Ways and means financing that has brought the economy to the brink of collapse. We've seen our exchange rate, the currency, the naira, trade from about 600 naira to $1 to currently about 1,600. We've seen inflation run ravage, currently at about 34%. The implication of all of this is that the quality of life of the average Nigerian has suffered dramatically from the heights that we had in the early 2000s. Percentages of between 7 and 8%. Everyone was happy with where they were financially. I would say that in the last few weeks, I've actually had more requests from people for financial support or the other than probably any other time that I can remember. And the truth is that as people have those requests, it doesn't mean that your own needs have suddenly gone on holiday. You still have your own needs and you need to find a way to meet them. So we're in this situation right now where wages and salaries that people have been collecting are not sufficient to actually make a consumer nation rather than a producer nation. The problem with a consumer nation is that we have to pay for everything that we consume. And unfortunately, because we found shortcut ways to get rich, we found ways that are not complementary to add to our wealth. When it comes to hard work, we're not motivated to do it. So what is the problem? Where are we today? Nigeria is in a situation whereby all of its resources do not have the same value that they had in the past. We had a president who borrowed significant amounts of money that has put a lot of pressure on government revenues. So Nigeria is actually today, less today than we were a few years ago, borrowing money to pay salaries. Yes, I told you that, yes. Borrowing money to pay salaries. Now, the implication of that for the average Nigerian, like I said earlier on, is that you have less money in your pocket after you've met your basic needs. And because of that, life looks a little more challenging for you. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about practical ways in which you can actually adjust yourself to the current realities and thrive in the middle of it. I'm going to go the faith way as well. The Bible tells us the story of Isaac in the land of famine. And somehow, Isaac was planting in that land of famine and it was rewards and harvesting multiple fruits. But something was unique about Isaac being able to do that. It's a story that most people read in isolation but do not understand that there were actually economic variables at play in Isaac being able to plant in a land of famine and reap rewards. And I'll talk to you about those economic principles. However, there are 7 steps I'm going to be talking to you about today that would help you get your career or get your finances back on the right step. The first one is, I always say this, get in touch with reality. It is not a time to be in denial. I think that was the biggest problem of the Buhari regime when he was president. They were in denial about what Nigeria's current situation was, and it gave us the impression that everything was fine, even though those of us who were economists knew that everything wasn't fine. Getting in touch with reality means that you understand the variables that are at play in your life at this particular moment, and you are able to isolate them. I say this to people that 99% of the things that happen around you, they are neither diabolical, they are not divine. They are the consequences of the actions or inactions that you've taken. Sometimes you can blame the devil and you can blame God, but neither of them have contributed to your circumstance. So the first thing I want you to do is get in touch with reality. Understand where you are. Outline where you are. Call a meeting with your family and explain to them what your income is and what your expenses are and then what level of savings that you have. It is important because if you don't, you are setting yourself up to live a life that is unsustainable. So you must be very careful. Get in touch with reality. That's number one. Number two is one thing you probably have heard many people talk about. It's having a plan B. So look, I have a friend who used to say that Femi always has a plan B. Sometimes when you position your plan B with faith, they might not speak the same language. But the reality is that in finance, in business, in entrepreneurship, we always say that you must have alternative courses of action. If one path does not lead you to your results, you must have an alternative. If you sit in one place and you're looking at one specific career that has brought you to where you are today, and you know that there is a future route right out there that is completely incompatible with the skills that you have today, you must pivot. You must learn a new skill. You must get a new set of incomes. You must expand and diversify your income base. If you don't do that, you're going to get caught out. Let me give you a very interesting story. Remember Kodak? I mean, this is talked about every time. Kodak, the instant photos. You know, Kodak was one of the biggest companies listed, Fortune 500 company in the United States. But guess what? In the turn of the 80s, everyone else started to realize that digital photography was the way to go. Kodak were like, no, we're committed to our resource. And they never took a plan B. Guess what? Kodak today is not the company that it was before. Probably gone through multiple rounds of bankruptcy. That is what happens when you don't have a plan B. A plan B means that you're looking at the issues that you have with you today, and you're looking at multiple ways of solving the same problem. You can never go wrong when you have an alternative plan. Now, the third thing that I want you to talk about is what I call focus on the first step. Why do I tell you to focus on the first step? You see, a lot of the time as individuals, we try to think multiple steps ahead. But the reality is that you need to be alive to actually get to step 24. Start with step 1. Step 1 says, I will be pragmatic. Step 1 says that I'm going to use my faith in the place where it is most effective. Step 1 says that I'm going to ensure that I'm dedicating my resources to the areas of my life that need it the most. The days of discretionary, explosive spending, those days have to be numbered. You have to cut short on this discretionary, explosive spending, because if you don't, it's only a matter of time before you run out of savings. So the first step always have to be security. Secure where your position is. Secure where you are. And once you have done that, then you can look at the future with confidence. Now, the fourth point I want to talk to you about is what I say, do not be guided by fear. Now, fear is a very powerful tool. So I used to tell this story that when I was much younger, if someone ever asked me a question and said to me, Femi, what was your biggest fear? And I used to say that, the interesting thing was that my biggest fear in life was to want something or need something and not to be able to afford it. And because of that, I drove myself right from when I was a teenager to attain heights that even older people had not achieved, simply because I was driven by fear. But I learned very quickly in my life that the motivation that comes from fear is actually a very dangerous motivation, because the moment the fears are no longer relevant, what happens is that you forget the problems that you have anyways. So think about it. If a man's fears and his motivation was hunger, the moment the man achieves some level of financial stability where hunger is no longer his problem, it's going to be difficult for him to motivate himself to aspire for the next thing. So don't be incapacitated by fear. Don't be like the hare that has been caught in the headlights of a car and doesn't know which way to go. What you use information for right now is about making decisions, making the right decisions for your future. So put fear on one place. Look at the future with confidence, but make sure that you've done all the work that is required for you to be able to live a life that delivers on the results that you need. Do not let fear incapacitate you. Now, number 5, and this is very important because I need you to take a book now and a paper. See, number 5, I say that you must rethink the buckets in which you put money in. So let me tell you something that I did a few years ago. I had a talk with a group of women, and I said to them, if you do not record what you do with your money, it's very likely that you're spending money on frivolities that do not add anything to you. And they looked at me, I was like, oh, what's this man talking about? I said, okay, let's do something. I wanted to buy a brand new exercise book, 2B or 2A, and better get a pen. And every time you spend money, I want you to write out what you spend, how much you spend, and what you use the money for. And what you use the money for at the end of the first month is what I would describe as buckets. So there's your entertainment bucket, there's your expenses bucket, there's your rent bucket, there's all of these buckets. Now you say the problem is this: if you don't rethink the buckets you're spending your money on today, those buckets are going to help you spend your money in future. So imagine someone who was spending 20% on discretionary spending. That is, oh, let's go to the cinema, or let's go out and have a meal. Today, if you keep doing that, you're going to run out of money. Because just a hangout now, you're going to be spending a few thousand naira. And it also depends on where you're going. So you need to rethink the buckets in which you're putting your resources in. Right now, your focus should be more on savings and investment, and ensuring that you are meeting the most important needs. And all the discretionary spend, you should actually start to think about them and from a different perspective. Don't ever complicate your life by putting your buckets in the big areas. Oh, I want to go on a holiday. Meanwhile, you have not paid your rent. I want to buy a brand new iPhone. Meanwhile, you are owing your landlord 3 months of rent. Oh, I want to buy a brand new car. Meanwhile, you've not paid your children's school fees. You have to be able to prioritize and focus on the most important of resources that you need. Now, the sixth point is what I would say: you need to simplify your financial life. I know a lot of people who in the last few years, because of the preponderance of loan apps, everyone is borrowing money from loan apps. The moment you want to have a bill to pay, the first thing you're thinking is, let me go and loan money from them. The problem with this mentality is that the expense and the cost of these loans are very high. So these guys are lending money to you at 10%, 15% per month. And the implication of that is, when your income now shows up, the cost of this new lifestyle of relying on expensive loans, it outweighs the benefits. And if you don't think about it from that perspective, you're going to just wake up one morning and you realize that they're sending WhatsApp messages to your family. Oh, Femi has borrowed money from this company, he's dead. Or Femi has done this, obituary for Femi because he has refused to pay for his loans. You must avoid those types of embarrassments by ensuring that you simplify your financial life. Focus on the things that you can afford. Focus on the things that are important. And don't stretch yourself thin in any way, and that will require you consistently relying on loan apps to be able to live your lifestyle. Now, the final point that I want to talk to you about today is what I call my point number 7, and that is, you must rely on God. If God was not with you when you got into this problem, He better be with you when you come out of it. The Bible says to us, I've been young and now I'm old. I have never seen the son of the righteous beg for food. That means that there is a promise that is available for you if you're righteous, if you are the son of God, that God will meet your needs. And you must understand that the faith that you have in God is an important part of your survival on this earth. You know, one of the things that I always say is that I found out that even in countries that have a high percentage of suicides, the moment Christianity and faith becomes fundamental in such people's lives, the tendency for them to commit suicide is significantly reduced. Simply because we know that the Bible says to us that no matter what we may be going through, that God is always going to be there for us. I think it's Romans chapter 8 verse 32 that says that what can separate us from the love of God? It says neither pestilence, nor tribulations, nor problems, nor all sorts of difficulties can separate us. And you see, the moment you have this understanding, then it means that in lots of the problems that you're dealing with, that they've all been solved. I want you to understand this as around this stuff. That, listen, Nigeria is in a difficult place, and I can tell you with full confidence, I'm an economist. Yes, I'm a pastor, but I'm also an economist. I can tell you with full confidence that the path out of this cycle is not going to be a smooth one. There are going to be some interesting days ahead, and you must be prepared for those days. You must be ready for them to face them head on and ensure that your family is able to survive in the middle of it. Look, there's this thing that I want to say to you, and I always say to people, that the one who has information is the one who has an advantage over other people. So what does this mean for you practically? I'm going to give you a few steps that you need to just take at this point in time. Just guidelines that you should be going ahead with. One thing that should be clear to all of us right now is that we're in a very difficult economic environment. But I'm confident that you're going to thrive in the middle of it. Now, first thing I say is avoid relationships that cost you money and bring no value. And that can be very funny, right? But that's the truth. There's so many relationships that we have in our lives that cost us money but don't add any value to us. You must avoid those people right now, because a lot of people are looking for someone to pass their problems on to. without making any efforts at solving it himself. So avoid those kind of relationships. If somebody is getting married now, there's no need for you to buy ashwebi. There's no pressure on you to do it. Reduce that pressure to want to be among the Joneses, to just show up because people have invited you. I think one of the beautiful things about me now is that I don't really like social gatherings. So it's almost difficult for you to actually drag me into one. And that means I'm reducing my expenses. Because if I was going for a social gathering, I'll need to find something to wear. I need to find money to buy petrol to the car to go there. I need to buy a gift for the person. Those things right now, you need to step down on them. Second thing I want to say to you is that don't try to compete with anyone. That desire that, oh, my neighbor is doing something, so I want to do it. You and your neighbor did not come to the world together. Focus on your own needs. Focus on your own desires and do not be motivated by somebody else's needs or desires. Third point I want you to take care of, reduce your responsibilities. Bro, this is not the time for you to become Father Christmas to everyone. If they are not important, if they are not family, if their lives are not a threat, it's not a medical situation, you don't have to meet everyone's needs. Focus on ensuring that people around you are able to eat and survive, and not about ensuring that you're funding a lifestyle that is way out of your own budget. And then avoid those who ask you in advance, what are you going to do for me for my birthday? Oh, bro, I'm not your daddy. I'm not going to do anything for you for your birthday. I'm going to say a nice word of prayer for you. I'm going to speak a word of assurance into your life. Because in this kind of seasons, you have to be very deliberate about how you're treating your finances. And finally, I would say to you, in the places where you've made mistakes, you've taken loans from loan apps and all of those things, focus on repaying those loans. You see, because the interesting thing is that one of the decisions the central bank has taken has been to increase interest rates. In the last 6 months, interest rates have increased in Nigeria by 800 basis points. That is 8 whole percentage. So that means that if you had borrowed 1 million naira at the beginning of the year, it's costing you 80,000 naira more than it was costing you at the beginning of the year to service that loan. If you're not using that loan for something productive, run away from it. I'm going to finish with this. Listen, don't get emotionally blackmailed by people to meet needs that are not supposed to be met. You must have the discipline right now to focus on the important things and ensure that your results are what you're focused on at this point in time. I hope you've been blessed and you found this first episode quite interactive. I would like to hear from you. Send me your questions. I'm happy to answer them in the next episode. Send me your questions. Like I said, you can follow me on all my social media handles. I'm very quick to respond to inquiries from people. And let's do this next time. Remember this, my name is Femi Olade, and this has been Conversation with PFlow. Hi there, welcome to the Conversation with PFlow. My name is Femi Olade. Today, I'm going to be starting this first episode on something that's quite topical. Nigeria in the last few days has been experiencing what I would call a cost of living crisis that has led to several protests across the country. I think it's actually